Are you bringing your kid here to beg for a debt delay? Get out of my sight before I call security to drag you both out. Brooke Montgomery crossed her arms, her tight pencil dress showing her slim waist. But her look was pure poison as she stared at Gabriel Pierce. With a tight square jaw, the black man stood still like a stone statue. He shielded his daughter behind him. My appointment was at 9 in the morning. Now it is 2 in the afternoon, Gabriel said in a deep, heavy voice. Brooke sneered, hissing through her teeth. People like you have no right to question my time. 5 hours of being ignored in the cold lobby did not break Gabriel's natural dignity. He looked straight into the eyes of the proud female CEO. Time is up, Ms. Montgomery. Brooke did not realize who she had just insulted in front of the child. This black single dad actually owned the Apex Legacy Fund. Right now, he held the papers to pull his $500 million contract out of her system. To understand why a proud man like Gabriel Pierce sat still through 5 hours of insults, we have to rewind. 6 hours earlier, this story starts in a quiet kitchen in Atlanta. The clock read 5:15 in the morning. Gabriel stood at his stove, cracking eggs with steady hands. His daughter Hazel, 6 years old, sat on a wooden stool. Her curly hair was still tangled from sleep. The kitchen smelled like warm butter and fresh coffee. A faint smell of rain still clung to the window screen from last night's storm. Somewhere down the hall, the old heater clicked and hummed. He poured a carton of organic milk into her cup. The box cost $14.25, but he never checked the price when it came to Hazel. He tied a pale, pink bow into her hair, his thick fingers careful and slow. His fingers were rough and callous from years of gripping steering wheels and briefcase handles. Yet they moved gently through her curls, careful not to pull too hard. Hazel giggled when the bow finally sat straight. "Daddy, why do you always wake up before the sun?" Hazel asked, her voice soft and sleepy. Gabriel smiled, his square jaw softening. "Because the world needs quiet men who work hard, baby girl." He was not just a father who cooked breakfast. Gabriel ran Apex Legacy Group, a private fund worth $473 million. He built it from nothing, one deal at a time, over 13 long years. He started with a rented desk in a small office above a laundromat. Back then, he answered his own phone calls and carried his own boxes. Nobody handed him a single dollar. Every client came because he earned their trust slowly, honestly, one handshake at a time. He still remembered the smell of that first office dust and dryer sheets mixed together in the hallway air. At 8:15, his phone buzzed on the counter. It was Maria, the nanny. A pipe had burst in her kitchen. Water was flooding her floor. She could not come today. Gabriel looked at the clock. His private flight to Chicago left in 45 minutes. He could not cancel the biggest meeting of his year. He made his choice fast. He packed a small backpack for Hazel. Inside went crayons and a fresh drawing book. She would come with him. At the airport, his legal assistant Fiona met him at the gate. She handed him a thick brown folder. Inside sat the trust transfer documents, $500 million, ready for signature. The airport smelled like jet fuel and burnt coffee. Somewhere overhead, a flight announcement crackled through old speakers, half drowned by rolling suitcase wheels. "Belmont Financial wants this deal badly," Fiona said, glancing at Hazel's small hand gripping her father's coat. "Are you sure about bringing her?" Gabriel nodded once. "She comes first. Always." Fiona pressed her lips together, worry lines forming across her forehead. She had worked beside Gabriel for 6 years, and she trusted his judgment completely. Still, something about this trip felt heavier than usual. "I'll keep watching the wire transfers from here," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Call me the second something feels wrong up there." "It always feels wrong up there," Gabriel muttered under his breath, adjusting Hazel's backpack strap over her small shoulder. The night before, Charles Belmont himself had called Gabriel at 9:30. Charles was 76 years old, the legendary founder of Belmont Financial Partners in Chicago. His voice on the phone had sounded tired, almost desperate. He admitted his company had grown stiff and slow. He needed fresh capital and fresh ideas from a younger mind. "Gabriel, join us. Bring your fund into our system," Charles had said. "You could change everything here." Gabriel had listened quietly, tapping a pen against his desk while Charles spoke. The old man's voice carried real weight, decades of experience wrapped around every word. "Our board is old and slow," Charles admitted, a tired sigh crackling through the phone line. "We need someone hungry, someone who still remembers what it feels like to build." The stakes were enormous. If Gabriel signed with Belmont, his name would explode across the Midwest market. But he also needed something from this deal. In 40 days, Gabriel planned to close on Fairmont Logistics, a trucking company worth $180 million. He needed Belmont's massive liquidity to guarantee that deal would not collapse. Still, doubts sat heavy in his chest as the plane climbed into gray clouds. He knew the old money culture of Chicago families. Behind their glass towers, quiet prejudice often lived comfortably. He had seen it before in smaller rooms at smaller tables. A firm handshake that lasted half a second too short. A meeting moved to a smaller office at the last minute. Small things, easy to explain away, yet impossible to forget. He did not want to hand his hard-built company to a system that might choke his freedom. Fiona had warned him twice already. Something felt wrong about this rush. "Slow down, Gabriel," she had told him back at the office, arms crossed tight. Old money moves slow for a reason. Don't let their urgency become your mistake. He respected her instinct. Fiona had never once steered him wrong in 6 years. But the Fairmont deal clock kept ticking, and 40 days felt shorter every hour. The plane hummed steadily as clouds drifted past the small window. Hazel opened her new drawing book and began sketching a purple dog with crooked ears. Hazel pressed her small face against the airplane window. "Daddy, are people in Chicago as cold as the weather there?" Gabriel chuckled softly, brushing a curl away from her forehead. "Some people are, baby girl, but not everyone. You'll meet good people too, like Miss Fiona," Hazel asked, still coloring carefully inside the lines. "Just like Miss Fiona," Gabriel said, smiling despite the tight knot forming in his chest. Gabriel looked past her at the gray sky outside. A strange, quiet worry settled in his stomach. He could not explain it, but he felt it. At 9:02 that morning, Gabriel walked through the revolving doors of Belmont Tower with Hazel's small hand in his. The lobby smelled like polished steel and cold air. A receptionist named Chloe looked up from her desk. Her eyes moved slowly down Gabriel's plain wool coat, then to Hazel's small backpack. Her mouth tightened into a thin line. "Take a seat, over there," Chloe said, pointing toward a dark corner far from the elevators. She did not offer coffee. She did not smile. Gabriel sat down without a word. He pulled out Hazel's crayons and set them on his knee like a small table. He would not let this cold room touch his daughter's mourning. Behind the reception desk, a 15-foot wall of falling water hummed against smooth gray stone. The sound never stopped, cold and steady, like a clock counting down something unseen. Every few minutes, another visitor arrived. Men in sharp gray suits walked straight past Chloe's desk without stopping. She rose quickly for each one, escorting them toward a private elevator with a warm smile. Nobody offered that same smile to Gabriel. His steel chair felt colder with each passing hour. He kept his back straight, refusing to let his shoulders sag. The hours crawled by. 10 o'clock passed, then 11. Hazel's stomach growled softly, and her small shoulders slumped with hunger. She tugged gently on her father's sleeve, too polite to complain out loud. At 11:30, a woman in a worn cardigan approached them quietly. Her name was Beatrice, 62 years old, from the mailroom downstairs. She carried no fancy business card. Instead, she held a small apple juice box, $1.80 from the vending machine, and a brand new sketchbook for Hazel. "Here, sweetheart," Beatrice whispered kneeling down with a soft grunt. Every artist needs fresh paper. Hazel's face lit up like a small sun. She hugged the sketchbook tight against her chest. Gabriel felt his throat tighten with quiet gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am," Gabriel said softly, extending his hand. "You didn't have to do that." Beatrice waved him off with a small laugh, her worn cardigan sleeves brushing against the marble floor as she knelt. "Baby, I've worked this mailroom for 11 years. I know a hungry child when I see one." She glanced around the lobby quickly, checking to see who might be watching. Her voice dropped lower, careful and quiet. Beatrice leaned close to Gabriel's ear. Her voice dropped low, almost shaking. "Young man, watch yourself with Brooke Montgomery. She won't look at the numbers in your folder. She only sees your skin and that little girl." Gabriel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He simply nodded, tucking her warning deep into his chest like a stone. Meanwhile, through a secure message, Fiona sent updates from Atlanta. Something strange was happening inside Belmont's investment records. Several minority clients seemed to vanish from their client lists. Gabriel read the messages in silence, his thumb moving slowly across the screen. He said nothing to Hazel. He simply watched, and he remembered. Fiona's last message glowed on his screen. 3 former clients filed complaints against Belmont last year. All 3 cases were quietly dropped. Something here does not add up, Gabriel. He tucked the phone back into his coat pocket, his mind sorting through the pieces slowly. Whatever waited for him on the 52nd floor, he would face it prepared. Finally, at 2:02 in the afternoon, after 5 long hours, a tall glass door opened on the 52nd floor. Millennium Park stretched below like a green carpet. This is where our story catches up to that cold, sharp moment. Brooke Montgomery sat at the head of a glass table, her emerald dress hugging her frame like armor. Her golden hair curled in perfect waves. Her green eyes were sharp as glass. Across from her stood Gabriel, calm and still, with Hazel pressed close behind his leg. Brooke had grown up inside this tower. She learned early that a sharp tone and an expensive dress could open any door. Nobody had ever told her no, not once, not in 36 years. To her, kindness looked like weakness. She believed rules existed to sort people into 2 groups, those who mattered and those who did not. She never once questioned which group she belonged to. "Are you bringing your kid here to beg for a debt delay?" Brooke snapped, her arms crossed tight. "Get out of my sight before I call security." Gabriel did not raise his voice. "My appointment was at 9 in the morning. Now it is 2 in the afternoon." Brooke's phone buzzed twice on the table. She picked it up mid-sentence, laughing with a friend about a yacht party that weekend. She never once looked at Gabriel's folder. When Hazel's crayon slipped and rolled across the floor, Brooke wrinkled her nose. She waved a hand to her assistant to pick it up, disgust written across her face. Instead of opening Gabriel's real proposal, Brooke slid across a thin slide. It showed a small business credit package worth only $10 million, a fraction of what he brought. "This is the best Belmont can offer men like you," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We don't design services for unprepared single fathers." 5 hours of being ignored in the cold lobby did not break Gabriel's dignity. His face stayed calm, but his heart pounded slow and heavy behind his ribs. He reached into his coat and pulled out the original signed document. $500 million, already approved by his own board back home. He slid it across the glass table. "Time is up, Ms. Montgomery." Brooke's face drained from rosy pink to pale white. Her eyes locked onto the number printed at the bottom of the page. Her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers hovered over the paper, refusing to touch it, as if the page itself might burn her skin. A vein pulsed once at her temple, quick and sharp. Her jaw clenched tight beneath her perfect makeup. Silence. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Somewhere behind the glass wall, a clock ticked once, twice, impossibly loud in the frozen room. No one moved. No one breathed. Her lips trembled first, then curved into a fake, stretched smile. She reached for a softer tone, offering Gabriel a platinum status package, private lounges, personal bankers. But Gabriel had already stood up. He took Hazel's small hand and turned toward the door. I never hand my money to someone who cannot respect a person. The elevator ride down felt endless. 32 floors of silence broken only by Hazel's soft humming. Gabriel held his daughter's hand tight, his pulse finally beginning to slow. He thought the fight was over. He thought walking away, with his dignity intact, was the final chapter of this ugly afternoon. He was wrong. At 4:15 that afternoon, as Gabriel stepped into the lobby downstairs, his phone buzzed with an urgent bank alert. His stomach dropped like a stone into cold water. Brooke had used a hidden dispute clause from an old agreement. She had frozen his shared escrow account, $180 million, locked completely overnight. Gabriel stared at the message on his screen, his jaw locking tight beneath his beard. Hazel tugged his sleeve, sensing the sudden change in her father's mood. "Daddy, is something wrong?" she asked, her small voice full of concern. Gabriel forced a calm smile onto his face, kneeling down to her level. "Nothing you need to worry about, baby girl. Daddy just has some work to do." Inside, his mind raced through every legal option available. Brooke had moved fast, faster than he expected, from someone still shaking from shock an hour earlier. The Fairmont Logistics deal now stood on the edge of collapse. Only 40 days remained, and his liquid cash sat trapped behind Belmont's cruel, quiet revenge. 2 days passed like slow poison. On Thursday morning, an anonymous article appeared on a Chicago finance website. The headline read like a knife across his name. It called him a reckless single father, claiming Apex Legacy faced a liquidity crisis. The word stung, sharp and unfair, sitting heavy in his chest all morning. 3 major partners in Atlanta called, that same morning, asking to postpone their scheduled review. Gabriel took each call, standing by the window, his voice calm despite the storm building inside him. "We just need clarity, Gabriel," one partner said carefully, his tone apologetic but firm. "The market is nervous. You understand how this looks." Gabriel understood exactly how it looked. 13 years of careful work, now painted as reckless because one wealthy woman wanted revenge. He kept his voice level, promising answers soon. That night, Gabriel sat alone in his hotel room, the wind rattling softly against the window glass. Hazel slept curled on the bed, her small chest rising and falling. The hotel room smelled like fresh linen and faint lemon cleaner. Down below, taxi horns echoed faintly through the closed window, a distant reminder that the city never slept. He watched her sleep for a long time, his jaw muscles tight beneath his beard. Had he made a terrible mistake, dragging his daughter into this fight? He picked up his phone and scrolled through the cruel headline again. His stomach twisted into a hard, cold knot. He set the phone face down on the nightstand. 13 years of building something from nothing might crumble because of one proud woman's cruelty. His hands curled into fists on his knees, knuckles turning pale. He thought of his own father, a mechanic who worked 60 hours a week and never once complained. That man had taught him something simple. Stand tall, even when the ground shakes. But something deep in him refused to bend. A quiet fire, passed down from a father, who taught him to never kneel for cruelty. He would not surrender. On Friday night, at exactly 8:30, Beatrice called Gabriel and asked to meet at a small diner on the south side. Her voice trembled through the phone. The diner smelled like fried onions and burnt coffee grounds. A cracked vinyl booth squeaked under Gabriel's weight as he waited near the window, watching the door. She slid into the booth across from him, clutching a worn leather notebook against her chest like something sacred. Her hand shook slightly as she opened it. "I almost didn't come," Beatrice admitted, glancing over her shoulder toward the diner's front window. "I've kept this quiet for 6 years. 6 long years." Gabriel reached across the table and gently touched her trembling hand. "You're safe here, Beatrice. Whatever this is, it stays between us until you say otherwise. Inside were 6 years of careful handwriting. Dates, times, names. 14 black and minority clients, each one turned away or humiliated in that same cold lobby. I kept this because someone had to remember them, Beatrice whispered, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. Nobody ever believed me before. Gabriel held the notebook like a weapon forged from patience. This matched perfectly with older complaint files that Fiona had already dug up in Atlanta. He flipped slowly through the pages under the diner's dim yellow light. Each entry told a small, quiet tragedy. A retired teacher turned away without a reason. A young nurse denied a simple loan meeting. One entry, dated 3 years earlier, described a grandmother crying in the same cold lobby chair Gabriel had sat in that morning. Beatrice had written the date, the time, and a single word beside it. Ignored. The pattern was real. It was not one bad afternoon. It was a system quietly running for years, and Brooke Montgomery sat at the very center of it. 14 names, Gabriel murmured, closing the notebook gently. 14 people who trusted this place and got nothing back but silence. Beatrice nodded, wiping her eyes with a paper napkin. I wrote every single one down because somebody needed to remember them. I just never had proof strong enough to matter. Until now. Rain poured hard against his windshield on Saturday as Gabriel drove north toward Lake Forest, Illinois. He was heading straight to Charles Belmont's private estate. The old founder had built his company from 2 empty hands decades ago to serve ordinary families. Would he protect that legacy or protect his own blood? The estate sat behind tall iron gates, half hidden by dripping oak trees. Rain drummed hard against the roof of Gabriel's car as he stepped out into the storm. Charles opened the door himself, his silver hair damp from the storm outside. His tired eyes widened when he saw the leather notebook in Gabriel's grip. "Mr. Pierce," Charles said slowly, stepping aside to let him in from the rain. "I heard about the account freeze. I did not authorize that." "I believe you," Gabriel replied, stepping into the warm hallway. Water dripped from his coat onto the polished wooden floor. "But someone in your family did." Gabriel placed the journal and a frozen account notice on the old man's wooden desk. His voice stayed low, steady, and unshaking despite the storm outside. "Charles, you built Belmont to serve people," Gabriel said. "Did you build it so your niece could crush their dignity instead?" Charles opened the notebook slowly, his weathered fingers trembling as he read page after page. His face grew pale, then twisted with something close to grief. His finger traced one line, then stopped. He read it again, slower this time, his lips moving silently around each word. He said nothing for a long moment. Only the sound of rain tapping the window filled the silent study. Then he closed the notebook softly. Thunder rumbled outside, low and distant. Charles set the notebook down on his desk and pressed both palms flat against the polished wood, steadying himself. "I raised her wrong," Charles whispered, his voice cracking with age and shame. "I let the money blind both of us." At exactly 6 in the morning, that Sunday, a 5-page investigation dropped across the national finance wire. A reporter named Audrey Miller had done her research. She laid out every hidden detail, the frozen accounts, the discrimination pattern, the 14 names from Beatrice's journal. Charles Belmont himself gave a sharp, damning quote condemning it all. The story spread fast, shared across finance circles by sunrise. Belmont Financial's name trended for all the wrong reasons, and Brooke's phone would not stop ringing. She sat alone in her apartment, staring at the endless stream of missed calls lighting up her screen. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the article, word by damning word. For the first time in her life, nobody was rushing to defend her. The silence on the other end of every call felt louder than any insult she had ever thrown. Monday morning arrived cold and sharp. At 9:47, the 52nd floor boardroom filled with lawyers, board members, and quiet, tense whispers. Charles Belmont stood at the head of the table this time, not Brooke. His hands did not shake anymore. His voice rang clear through the glass room. He read the founding veto clause aloud, a power written into the company's original charter back in 1987. Every head in the room turned pale. Brooke Montgomery was suspended from every position, effective immediately. Security approached and asked for a badge. Her fingers trembled as she handed it over. She looked toward Charles, waiting for him to soften, waiting for the family loyalty she always trusted. He did not look back at her. He only stared at the table. "You built nothing," Charles said quietly, his voice thick with old grief. "You inherited everything, and you spent it tearing people down." She stared at the empty space, where her badge used to sit clipped to her dress. Her career, built on inherited privilege, crumbled in under 1 minute. Around the table, board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Nobody spoke in her defense. Nobody even met her eyes as she gathered her things and left. Gabriel's frozen account released. Within the hour, all $180 million restored. The Fairmont Logistics deal was saved with days to spare. News of his calm strength during the scandal spread through investment circles fast. Word reached Nora Fitzpatrick, chairwoman of the Illinois Teachers Pension Fund, within days. Weeks later, inside the bright new offices of Apex Legacy, Gabriel signed a historic contract. $1.4 billion, the largest deal of his career. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, warming the polished conference table. Fiona stood quietly near the door, watching the moment she had worked years to help build. Nora shook his hand firmly, her eyes warm with respect. "Your calmness in the face of injustice tells me everything about where our teachers' money belongs." "Thank you for trusting me," Gabriel replied, his deep voice steady and sincere. "I promise every dollar will be handled with the same respect I would want for my own daughter's future." Nora smiled, glancing toward Hazel, who sat quietly in the corner drawing a picture of the tall glass building. "She's a lucky girl, Mr. Pierce. Lucky to have a father like you." Gabriel had one more thing left to do before the celebration could begin. He mailed a handwritten letter to a small mailroom on the south side. He wrote every word himself, late one night at his kitchen table, while Hazel slept upstairs. No assistant typed it. No lawyer reviewed it first. Beatrice opened the envelope with careful fingers, her breath catching when she saw the offer inside. Director of Client Experience at triple her old salary. Her hands trembled as she read the letter twice. Then she read it a third time, just to be certain. On her first morning, Beatrice pushed through the glass doors of Apex Legacy, her old coat replaced by a warm new blazer. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers and clean air. Gabriel stood, waiting near the front desk, watching the door. He crossed the floor and took both her hands firmly in his. His voice was warm, thick with something close to tears held back. "Here, nobody ever has to wait 5 hours," Gabriel said, smiling wide for the first time in weeks. "Not you. Not anyone." Hazel ran across the lobby floor, her new sketchbook flapping in her small hand. She wrapped her arms around Beatrice's waist, laughing loud and free. "Miss Beatrice, look what I drew," Hazel said, flipping open her sketchbook to a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Beatrice knelt down slowly, her eyes glassy again, but this time with a different kind of tear. "That's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen, baby." Fiona watched from across the lobby, arms crossed, a small proud smile tugging at her lips. She had seen Gabriel fight through hard years before. None felt quite like this one. She thought back to the airport, that morning, to her own quiet worry, as Hazel's small hand gripped her father's coat. Every worry had been worth it in the end. Outside the tall glass windows, the Atlanta sun poured warm and golden across the floor. A father, a daughter, and a kind old woman stood together at last. Dignity had waited patiently in a cold lobby chair. In the end, Dignity walked out carrying $500 million, and something far more valuable than money.